My name is Carolyn Etsch. I am a farmer in Middlesex County, and we have a farm. I married into it and knew nothing about farming. I'm from Bergen County, so whatever I learned on the fly, which has been 23 years of marriage and a couple of years before that. But it's certainly, I'm certainly a part of the operation now. So our farm was a subsistence farm in 1932. Grand Central Parkway was going through Long Island and bought Grandpa's farm, and so he came to New Jersey and bought what was a farmstead at that point, and it had a house, it had some barns. And back then, well, everybody just had a little bit of this and a little bit of that to live. Of course, now things are so different in New Jersey. Right now, they farmed acre and acres of potatoes. A lot of Central Jersey was potato ground, and then it became green beans. While Dad was a school teacher, so he was working off the farm for the income and then farming beans and trucking them up to Newark. And my husband was 5 between Grandpa and his dad with his bag of Oreos, going to Newark Market, selling his beans early in the morning, and then going back and starting all over. Then my husband went to Cook College and came back and graduated in '81, and they really started seriously a hay and straw business. There's a lot of training, horse training tracks right around where we are. So the hay and straw business took over, and actually has been really good for us to be able to support our corn habit, because that's a losing proposition for the most part, but the hay business has been able to get us to stay there and provide a 6-day-a-week retail business. So it's been a different kind of an operation than Grandpa's was. We have 2 sons, 22 and 20, and one wants to farm and one doesn't. It's been that way since they were 0. I used to have to lock the door to keep my oldest son outside to play because he always wanted to come back inside. And when he was 3, I looked at my husband and I said, "He's not your farmer, so just get it right out of your head. This kid does not want to come back to the farm." And my other one, who's 2 years younger, is now studying at Del Val in crop science to come back to the farm. So my husband we're equally proud of both of them. And if you ask my older son, he definitely still considers himself a farm kid. We just actually took back the pickup truck. He was driving our pickup truck around for 4 years at college and was about to graduate, so I needed something more economical, so I get my truck back, which is great. But he definitely is a farm kid and will do anything that he needs to be able to continue to help. And he's in Maryland, so there's not a whole lot he can do. But when he's home, he goes to work on Saturday mornings with Dad. We're still open half a day, and he still sells hay and straw. And if he's home for the summer, he helps us bale and does whatever he can do to still stay there. 7 years ago, I started an agritourism business. We have a corn maze there now. I had a lot of suburban friends who said to me, "What do you mean you grow corn and you don't have a corn maze?" And they were very proactive in helping me get it started, and it's certainly self-sustaining now. Takes a lot of effort for us because we're a different kind. We don't sell fruits and vegetables and have a built-in customer base from March till December. We have to reinvent the wheel every year with the corn maze and reattract people because it's only open for 7 weeks. And it's a totally different customer than our hay and straw guys. Those are a lot of people that are backyard horse people, or they are racers, and they're not coming to the corn maze. So I have a larger staff now, and we figured out how to get the audience back. But being the way that farming is, the past couple of years we had 2 disasters on Halloween weekend, and to the tune of losing $10,000 on the weekend. It just was really, really bad. But we're starting again for this year, so I guess you just kind of start all over again. That's the way it goes. But in terms of estate planning, we have a similar situation in that Dad had thought he had everything completely under control. He went to the lawyer who he's trusted his entire life, and they led him in the right direction to come up with some kind of an estate plan. And we thought, and he said to my husband, "Oh, it's all fine, everything's good." And so we didn't worry about it until all of a sudden we started to worry about it. There's a piece of paper that I asked Jenny to reproduce for you, and it's a questionnaire, basically. I'm involved with the Farm Bureau, New Jersey Farm Bureau, and the Women's Committee has a leadership conference every 2 years. And when I was at one of the leadership conferences in 2008, this speaker, Jolene Brown, was there and did a presentation to us about estate planning. And so I really started to ask questions, and I asked a lot of people who were our age, "What's going on in your farm? What's going on in your farm?" And just I registered all the information, and I took a year, and I just kind of let it sit. And then I finally approached my husband. I said, "We have to do something. Let's just ask a couple of questions." And we started with my family, who's a non-farming family. So that was a really good way to start. But we just went down the list of questions. And you should have it there in your packet. But things like, what do you want done with your body? Things like, I'm trying to see if I could find the list for you to try to.
With your what?
With your body.
Oh, this.
Yeah.
Oh.
Starting with something like that, which. Now, Jimmy's parents are 84. My dad's 84. And my father wanted no part of this conversation whatsoever.
Is it this?
Yes, it's the.
25 things you can get?
Mm,
Your state and order?
I don't know. It was a cover page from Jolene Brown. Okay. There's a cover page from Jolene Brown, and she's a professional speaker, and she does a lot of different topics. And one of them is basically how to get the conversation started, which you guys were alluding to before. Sometimes it just takes somebody on this side of the room having the conversation with someone on this side of the room. But there's an actual checklist. So we started to have this conversation with my dad, and he wanted no part of it. And my stepmom, who's younger, said, "Oh, we're so talking about this." So we just really answered the questions. Like, there are 10 different things. Where are your insurance policies? Where's your deeds? Where is everything? And I simply typed it up, and I left it in the kitchen. And I have 4 other siblings on my side. So everybody knows it's in the kitchen. That's where it is. And then eventually, I'm sure it'll get filed in the desk. But we just answered all the questions for mom and dad. And I made a mom column and a dad column, and because they were not always the same. And but we were able to at least see that once they started talking about it, there was tremendous relief in the room. And so I realized it was really important to do with Jimmy's dad, even though he said, and his father's the only one that really had any information. His mother, of the older generation, was just dad, her husband takes care of it all, so that's the way it goes. And that was, that's just the way it was, but that's not the same thing for my generation with my husband. We're more 50-50 partners about the whole thing. So when we started to answer the questions, they just started spewing all this information. Oh, it's over here, it's over here. Okay, well, where are the deeds? Yeah, that's the piece right there with the corner up right there. Where are the deeds to the properties? Now, we have a lot of properties. There's the main farm. There's a farm that was purchased with 90 acres on the other side of town. There's our house, which has 47 acres, which connects to mom and dad's house, which has 12 acres. So all these different properties all have their own deeds. And so one of them was, that little drawer in your desk that has the pencils? One of them was in there. So it was really, really good that we gathered all the documents, we got everything, and then we, of course, had an appointment with the lawyer. And they continued the conversation with them, which Dad had started 10 years ago. But I will tell you right now, if we had not gone in when we did, we would lose the farm. No questions asked. We would have to, we would not have the farm. Since that started, and Jimmy has one sister who's non-farming, very similar to my family, one farming, one non-farming. And so they made a lot of compensations, but the original conversation, the lawyer misunderstood what Dad really wanted. His intention is to perpetuate the farm. And if he really were to split the estate 50-50 with his sister, we would not have the funds to perpetuate the farm. It just wouldn't be. So what they did was they gave her compensation, and then the rest of the funds, now my husband's 53, it's finally been transferred to his name. So, and for a while there, I looked at him and I said, everything's been transferred except for our house. I'm like, you mean to tell me you're 53 years old, you have everything else, but you don't have the deed to your house? To me, that's just such a foreign concept. I grew up in a house, in a little suburban house, and it was just, you would buy your house and you'd have your deed. It didn't occur to me that he would have everything except for our piece. And of course, that's been fixed now. The conversation's continued. And so we have all of it so that my husband's got controlling partnership of it. And Mary and Roy were, Jimmy's dad and mom, were going to give Jimmy 100%. And because our son has indicated that he wants to go continue to farm, and is actually he's halfway through pursuing it at Del Val, there is some percentage, 10% of it is actually in his name, so that we can start to, just for tax purposes, be able to put it where it needs to go so that there's no capital gains and no inheritance tax and all that kind of stuff that's going to happen. They had started a lot of trusts, which were certainly the right way to go for us. Not always. There are a lot of different options that are out there, and you really need to trust your lawyer. You need to talk to a bunch of different people, someone who's done a lot of estate planning, and certainly someone who's done farm estate planning. It's a different thing than, I think, in my opinion, than regular estate planning. Because what will happen is you'll go into your lawyer and, like, start it to happen. It'll be split 50-50 like it would for anybody else, and it just doesn't, if you need the capital to be able to stay where you are. So things have been, his sister's been compensated and things have been transferred over, which is really good. We have, down that checklist, insurance policies were humorous for us particularly. People back in the 50s when they first got married, it was the salesman would come to your door and say, here, take this insurance policy. It was a term policy for $1,200 or whatever. They had like 38 insurance policies. And most of them were all paid up. And they're all just sitting like in the pile under the phone books. You know, it's, oh my gosh, it was just really, really eye-opening for us and very liberating for them. I think they're really happy that they don't have it on their shoulders anymore. As much as Dad really still wanted to control everything until the day he died, he's way happier that it's not that way anymore, I think. The other thing is that I'm still pushing them to actually sit down when everything is really completely done. We have one more piece to finish. To sit down and have a conversation with his sister now that they're alive and have that conversation so that there are no surprises. And for a lot of people, that's a sticky wicket. They don't really want to, they want everything to be a secret. And I just think that that is the worst decision you can have. All you're doing is setting up another family fight. I mean, back when my father-in-law wanted to take over the farm from he had 3 other siblings. He was the only one farming, and his mom had passed, his dad had passed, and he was awarded the farm, except for that they turned around and sued him. And he actually took them to court and was about to lose till someone from the neighborhood came forth and said, no, 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 these people are really not being honest, and he's telling the real story, and the judge sided with Dad. And so he ended up losing his family over this completely. He, to this day, never spoke to his siblings, and he has a niece now who's finally come back into the fold. But that entire family was broken, which is actually very, very common. That's what happens. When you have property, which, again, I never thought I'd have because I just, I got a small little job and I had a little house and that's the way it was. It's very, very common for families to be broken up completely over this. And so what we're trying to avoid is the same thing going to be happening, but there are no guarantees. Our lawyer actually recently said to Jimmy's parents, we want you to come here, not Jimmy taking you, not Carolyn taking you. They don't drive anymore, which is an issue. We don't care how you get here. Take a cab if you have to, on your own. And we're going to do a tape recording, and you're going to tell us your story so that it's, even though it's all written, there's some more testimony, because you can never be sure that someone down the road is not going to be angry that somebody else got something that they think they should have. So no matter how equitable you think it's going to be, you just never know when there's property involved. So we're already starting to set things up for the future. And so we've at least got the point where Mom and Dad have given it to us peacefully, we believe. And it's certainly made my husband feel a whole lot better knowing that up until 5 years ago, his father was still writing the checks, and Jimmy was running the business for 20 years. So he had to go to, like, Dad, can I have a check for this? Dad, can I have a check for that? And that was very, very hard for him. So when we noticed that he started to make some math mistakes, and so Jimmy just kind of capitalized on that and went and took the checkbook, and everything was done with the green ledger sheet spread across the kitchen table. So it's all computerized now, which with the IRS you have to pay everything electronically anyway. It was coming down the pike anyway, but he was so resistant to it that it was really good that it happened when it did. And certainly I think we've brought things up to where they need to be in terms of currency, media-wise. But there's still a lot of things that we need to consider now for our kids, because as I said, one's 22, one's 20, one's farming, one's not. We just had this conversation this morning. There are a lot of properties, as I mentioned, and so if our younger one comes back and decides, we have a lot of rental houses on these properties, decides that he wants to have a house, he's going to be living close by, he could certainly kind of get his pick of the houses, which is, God, who wouldn't, be so excited? It just blows my mind. It just still blows my mind. But because he's not living with me, I'll cook for him for a while, I'll give him a couple of years, and then he's out. But so then what do we do for the other one? We may be in Maryland, he may be in New Jersey, I don't know. So we were just deciding, just having a discussion, well, do we give him this piece of property? Do we give him that piece of property? What do we do? And so we still have to lay our piece out. We have wills that are signed and intact, but they're equitable, they're not wills that are really, they're going to have to be changed big time, because they're just still at the point in their life where they really don't know what they want to do. He may come back and farm for a couple of years and say, you know what, I don't want to deal with all of this anymore. I happen to like the corn maze, and I think for us financially, it's a nice boost. But people are very difficult to be with 24/7. And so if he doesn't want to do the retail thing, he's gonna hang it up. And he likes, most farmers go into farming because they want to be in the tractor in the field, but that's not what sells your product. So, I mean, I don't know, he doesn't know what's going to happen down the road. I don't know what's going to happen down the road, and I'll continue to play out my piece for, I've got my shot at this and I enjoy doing it and that's fine. I don't know what he's going to want to do. So we can give him the resources and we can, certainly back him and help him. But at a certain point I said to my husband, I want to be done. I don't want to be 84 and still trying to have this conversation. I want to be, like by 70, I want to be done. So it's 15 years. I'm 55. I got 15 years to kind of figure this whole thing out. And by then, he'll be old enough to know whether he wants to stick with it or not. And there's a lot of things you can do in terms of transferring property, in terms of transferring funds. Things are in trust accounts and LLCs. We actually just took a step, which is a really, I don't know where the lawyer came up with this, but he said, everything was all lumped together under one LLC. And so we finally broke them all out. Each farm now is its own LLC, so that if something happens on one piece of property, they cannot take every single thing that we own. They can take that one piece of property. If there was a lawsuit, it would just be that LLC that would be brought to lawsuit. So, and that was really eye-opening for us. At least it's not going to be our house as well as everything else. I mean, we have in our corn maze, we take really large bales and build a structure just for fun. We had a castle. It was a castle-themed maze. We had a big castle. We had a birthday party, 14-year-old girl and 4 of her friends and her mom. Walked through the corn maze. It was night because we have a nighttime one from 7 to 9. You can go through with a flashlight. They were walking through, and all of a sudden, my husband was coming around with the hayride, and he looked up and he saw a person on top, and this is many, many feet in the air, on top of the castle. She just climbed up, even though there's signs everywhere, and she's jumping around the straw bales up top. And so we went over and got him and said, "What are you doing? You can't do that. Come down." And so I started to have a conversation with this girl about what was going to happen if she fell. And the mother was right there, and I said, "You know what happens if you fall?" I said, "I'm out of my house." And she was like, she had no idea, of course, because the public, we spend most of our time protecting the public from themselves, honestly, but she had no idea. So we had this conversation about how, things are going to happen. You're going to get hurt. You're going to need to sue me because you're going to need this money. And the mother got right in my face and said, "Don't you talk to my daughter that way." And I said, "Don't you put your daughter up on my corn maze." So and I think it's best if you leave the property right now. And she did, and everything ended okay. But the fact of the matter is, you really can't be too sure. So that step of protecting, if something were to happen at that 15 acres main farm, I would still have all the other properties because they're now separate LLCs. So that's one thing that we certainly learned out of this. That was a really good option. But if you just look at that document that Jolene gave you, you're free to reproduce it, share it with your friends. There are a lot of people our age whose parents are getting older, and while it may be a little bit difficult to start the conversation, maybe you don't want to start with number 1, okay, what do you want done with your body? Start with number 2, where are your insurance policies? Where's the deed to the house? And then go back to number 1. But if you answer those questions, it's just everything you need to know. Who comes to your house and fixes this kind of thing, so that if they end up in a nursing home, you have the information. And we just, like we said, we just printed it up and left it in the kitchen, and it was a real eye-opener for us. And had I not been involved with Farm Bureau, had I not been at this seminar, I never would have started the conversation, which is actually, in the end, going to save our farm.